Imagine standing outside a giant bank building, pulling on locked glass doors while your entire life savings sit trapped in the dark inside. The year was 2008, and a sudden heavy silence fell over the world. Inside those tall buildings, thousands of desks sat empty. People who thought they were safe had been sent home forever without a single warning. Out in the quiet neighborhoods, the terror felt even more real. Families packed their boxes in the dead of night, forced out of homes they had just bought. The financial crisis swept through towns like a cold winter wind. It left behind streets full of empty houses, broken dreams, and a deep, unsettling fear that nothing would ever be safe again. But behind the locked doors and the tears, a dark, hidden truth was waiting to be found. The news said the money was gone. But the money did not actually vanish into thin air. It simply moved. It slipped out of the hands of scared, everyday workers and slid quietly into the pockets of people who knew exactly what was happening. While ordinary people saw only a terrible disaster, a hidden few saw the perfect setup. Economic recessions are not just random times of bad luck or simple mistakes. They are the biggest, most secretive periods of wealth creation in human history, when the world feels like it is ending. The biggest fortunes are quietly being built from the ashes. These market downturns work just like a giant, invisible trap built entirely on human fear. When the numbers on a screen start to drop, panic spreads from person to person like a fast-moving sickness. No one wants to be the last one holding on to a sinking ship, so the wild rush for the nearest exit begins. The news screams that everything is falling apart, and pure terror takes over the public mind. Driven by this blind fear, ordinary people rush to sell everything they have spent years building. They give up their shares and properties at a massive loss. They throw away their future for pennies just to make the scary feelings stop. Yet deep in the shadows of all this panic, a very different group of people is watching. These are the masters of strategic investing. They do not run for the doors, and they do not scream. They sit perfectly still. They watch the terror unfold across the world with cold, calm, and calculating eyes. Their method is deeply unsettling because it requires so much cold patience. They wait and wait until the public fear reaches its absolute peak. Only when the panic is blinding, when everyone else is crying and giving up their best items for almost nothing, do these quiet buyers finally step out of the dark to claim their prizes. To survive these dark and scary times, a profound change must happen deep inside your mind. You have to stop looking at the financial world like a helpless victim waiting to be hunted. If you run when everyone else runs, you will always be eaten. You have to stop acting like frightened prey. Instead, you must learn to think exactly like the ones who win the game. You must shift from a scared victim to a cold, focused predator. It is a chilling change to make. But when the next crash comes, you must be the one ready to step into the quiet ruins and pick up the wealth that others throw away. In the cold, dark days of 2008, a massive fire sale swept through the global markets like a fast and deadly plague. Solid, powerful businesses with long histories of success were suddenly treated like worthless garbage. The panic was so deep that nobody cared what a company actually did or how much money it made. They just wanted out, no matter the cost, leaving a wide trail of ruined lives. People were so consumed by pure terror that they dumped perfectly good companies for pennies on the dollar. The trading floors became a silent graveyard of broken dreams where strong foundations were abandoned simply because the crowd was too scared to hold on. The streets were filled with the heavy silence of lost wealth. It was a time of total surrender, an era defined by giving up. This total collapse was driven by a dark, mindless machine known as forced selling. When the panic hit, huge banks and scared investors found themselves legally trapped in a nightmare. They had borrowed money to play the game, and now the bill was due. They were ordered to sell everything they owned immediately, just to pay back the massive debts that were dragging them under the water. It did not matter how low the prices dropped or how much money they lost in the brutal process. The machine forced them to sell their best items at the absolute worst time. This triggered a chilling chain reaction. Every forced sale pushed the prices even lower, which triggered even more forced selling, crushing the market deeper into the dirt with every passing hour. Deep inside this smoking wreckage, a totally different kind of hunter goes to work, practicing a quiet art known as value investing. These cold-blooded buyers do not listen to the screaming crowds. They ignore the endless panic flashing on the evening news. They know the mindless machine of forced selling has created a rare moment where perfectly healthy businesses are being thrown away for no good reason. Instead of running away, they slowly dig through the endless piles of financial trash to find the hidden gems. They look for real, undeniable value hiding beneath the dust. They scoop up powerful assets, buying pieces of great companies that have been marked down to almost nothing by a terrified public. They quietly fill their pockets while the rest of the world is busy weeping. Walking this lonely path requires a heavy, deeply unsettling psychological toll. You must stand completely alone in an eerie silence, making your moves when your friends, your family, and every voice on the TV is screaming that the world is coming to an end. The isolation is crushing. It feels as though you are the only person left who still believes the sun will rise again. It feels incredibly wrong in your gut, like stepping into a burning building when everyone else is running out. It demands a cold, robotic discipline to ignore the heavy dread in your own chest. You have to shut off your human emotions and trust the quiet math instead of the loud, terrifying fear that surrounds you. It is a lonely, chilling act of defiance. A similar digital graveyard was left behind during the massive dot-com bust of the early 2000s. Thousands of popular internet companies vanished overnight, leaving behind empty office buildings and shattered lives. The screens went dark, and the loud cheering was replaced by a shocking empty silence. Fortunes built on nothing but hope were wiped off the face of the earth in an instant. But among the endless rows of dead businesses, a few strong tech giants quietly survived the brutal slaughter. The shadow buyers who stepped into that quiet ruin bought the survivors for almost nothing. They picked up the pieces of the future while everyone else was looking at the destruction. They quietly locked away fortunes that would grow into massive empires over the next 20 years. The quiet truth about an economic crash is what happens to cash. Having saved money ready during a panic is a secret power. It is not just numbers sitting in a bank. In the dark shadows of a disaster like the 2008 collapse, ready cash becomes a hidden weapon waiting to be used. When the world stops, regular people are just trying to survive the week. They worry about keeping their jobs and feeding their families. But the prepared elite view this moment differently. Their saved money is a loaded gun in the dark. They are armed and ready to claim the pieces of a broken world. To use this weapon, they rely on a cold, emotionless rule called dollar cost averaging. This is a very simple, machine-like strategy. You do not try to guess when the panic will end. Instead, you set a strict rule to buy a little bit of a business every single month on the exact same day. This robotic nature is what makes it so powerful. It does not matter how far the prices fall. It does not matter how bad the news gets on the TV. The machine just keeps buying. It completely removes human fear from the act of investing, marching forward, while everyone else runs away in terror. This cold action leads to the dark math of the bottom. As market downturns drag on, prices crash lower and lower. Because the price is dropping, your fixed amount of monthly cash suddenly buys more and more pieces of the company. You're scooping up twice as much value for the exact same cost. This constant robotic buying creates a shocking result. You end up trapping massive amounts of value at the absolute bottom of the crash. When the fear finally fades and the world wakes up, you realize you have captured a huge fortune. You bought the most when the things were the cheapest, but the smart buyers do not just throw their money at any random business. They are hunting for survival industries. These are the rare tough companies that can live through the worst recessions. They are the businesses that stay standing when everything else burns to the ground. To find them, you have to look at what people are forced to buy, even when they are totally broke. No matter how bad things get, people still need basic food, power to keep the lights on, and medicine to stay alive. These grim survival businesses never stop making money, even in the deepest dark. There is a deeply unsettling moral reality to this kind of strategic wealth creation. You are stepping into a graveyard to find your fortune. It forces you to look at the crushing pain of others and see a golden ticket. It is a heavy, dark truth that sits quietly in the back of your mind. The companies that survive do not just live through the storm. They grow much stronger because they feed on the corpses of their weaker rivals who died. They take over the empty spaces left behind. Profiting from this brutal reality means you're building your future on the ruins of someone else's broken dream. The deepest truth of a market crash is the hardest one to accept. When the screens turn red and jobs vanish, the financial machine is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. A recession is not an accident or a mistake. It is a giant, brutal reset button pushed by the market itself. When that button is pressed, a massive shift of money begins. The system strips wealth away from the panicked, the scared, and the unprepared masses. It takes their homes, their stocks, and their savings, and hands them directly over to the quiet buyers waiting in the shadows. The crash is just a harvest for those who are ready. History proves this dark cycle happens over and over again. Look back at the Great Depression of 1929, when millions stood in breadlines and banks locked their doors. While the public suffered, that massive panic secretly acted as a powerful machine for making money. It birthed a brand new class of millionaires who understood the rules of the game. The exact same process happened in the crashes of the modern era. When the internet bubble popped and when the housing market collapsed in 2008, the prepared elite followed the exact same steps. They waited for the panic to peak, stepped into the wreckage, and bought the pieces for pennies. Every single economic disaster has served as a ladder for those who know how to climb it. The results of this cycle do not just fade away when the economy heals. They leave a permanent scar on the landscape of cities and towns. Entire neighborhoods change hands in the blink of an eye. The houses that once belonged to local families are swallowed up and placed into giant, untouchable collections held by distant companies. Drive down any suburban street today, and you will see the lasting shadow of the 2008 fire sale. The front doors look the same, but the names on the property papers are vastly different. Giant investment firms now own hundreds of thousands of single-family homes across the country. This massive shift in who owns the ground we stand on was born directly from the ashes of the crash. This new reality creates a permanent trap for everyday people. When giant companies buy up all the cheap houses during a panic, they do not sell them back when times get better. Instead, they turn them into permanent rental properties. They build a giant toll booth over the dream of owning a home. By holding on to these homes forever, the new owners shrink the number of houses people can actually buy. This drives prices up so high that regular workers can never save enough to get the keys. The gap between the rich and the poor locks into place. The people who lost their footing during the recession are forced to pay rent to the very same investors who bought their debt. The human cost of this master strategy is heavy and real, behind the brilliant math of buying low and selling high. There are millions of families who never got their footing back. They watch their children grow up in houses they can never hope to own. The smart financial moves of the elite are paid for by the quiet daily struggles of the working class. It is a harsh reality to face. Today, many parents are writing rent checks to massive corporations for the exact same childhood homes they lost decades ago. The wealth created during the crash cast a long, dark shadow over their futures. The market recovered, the numbers went back up, but the families left behind were permanently erased from the map of wealth. Look at the records from the government after the 2008 crash. The numbers showed a massive shift in who owned the country. Before the crisis, regular people held most of the housing wealth. But by 2012, giant investment groups had bought hundreds of thousands of empty homes. This was not just a quick market drop, it was a lasting change. The rules of strategic investing worked exactly as planned for those with cash. They used the economic downturns to buy up the American dream for pennies. The tools of wealth creation are cold and blind to human pain. Methods like dollar cost averaging and value investing do not care who lost their job. They are simply machines built to profit from fear. During recessions, these systems pull money away from the scared crowds and hand it to the patient few. The true aftershock of these crashes is not the money lost in the panic. It is the permanent wall built between the people who rent their lives and the people who own them. The next time the market falls quiet and the red numbers flash across the screens, remember the empty houses of 2008. While families pack their boxes in tears, someone else is quietly looking at a spreadsheet, waiting to buy their front door.